Educators and changemakers, welcome to the Education 2.0 conference. This is the premier event where the future of learning unfolds before your eyes. I am your MC, Angela. As we gather here today, we stand at the threshold of a new era in education, one defined by innovation, collaboration, and boundless potential. In this dynamic landscape, traditional paradigms are being reshaped and new possibilities are emerging at every turn. It's a thrilling time to be involved in education, and this conference is your gateway to the forefront of transformative change. So buckle up and prepare to be inspired, challenged, and empowered as we shape the future of learning together. Now, before we dive into the exciting discussion ahead, let's take a moment to express our deepest gratitude to our incredible partners. A huge thank you to Puzzlebox Academy, and to EDU Passport, our gold sponsor, for their unwavering support and commitment to educational excellence. Let's also extend our appreciation to Top Mathematics Education Centre and the Kijana Educational Empowerment Initiative. They are our bronze sponsors for their invaluable contributions. Also, the lavish lanyards that you're all wearing. Let's see your lanyards. Everyone's got one. Fantastic. Now, that is sponsored by EDU Passport. And all-in-one educational hub offering job opportunities, talent scouting, events, benefits, and more. With their support, today's event is truly possible. Let's give all of those sponsors a massive round of applause. Now, let us commence the eagerly anticipated sessions of day one. Now, everybody, please do use the hashtag Education2Conf. Okay, so if you want to write that down or pop that into your phones right now, so hashtag EDUCATION, number 2, CONF. Hashtag Education2Conf. So make sure you use that hashtag to feature your delightful moments and the ideas shared in this session on our social media pages. Today we're here to dive deep into a truth we hold dear, that for our students to blossom into the leaders they're destined to be, they need more than just classroom lessons. They need real-world experiences, the kind that test their mettle, sharpen their skills, and broaden their horizons. This is what our first panel discussion is all about. Please give a huge round of applause to our first moderator, Dr. Jennifer E. Herrera, the CEO, President, and Executive Director at Tucson International Academy, who will take the session forward on the topic, Linking Leadership Development to Real-World Experiences and Community Engagement. Let's put our hands together for Dr. Jennifer. Hello, welcome. And I will also announce our panelists. Thomas Moffat, co-founder and managing director of Amicitia. Come on down, Thomas Moffat. Dr. Raylene Ferguson Haugen, president and founder, RACIP Educational Consulting. Dr. Maria Presentin, behavioral scientist and Chief Knowledge Officer, Leadership Scientific. Dr. Wijdan Mubarak Alomain, Assistant Professor, Researcher, and Deputy Head, Radiography and Medical Image, Fatima College of Health Sciences. Fantastic. And now I will pass you over to Dr. Jennifer E. Herrera.
Check. All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Jennifer Herrera. Dr. J is what they call me at school. My husband and I are co-founders of 4 charter schools in Tucson, Arizona. Each school is kindergarten through 12th grade, and I was going to start this panel discussion by just giving some pictures and some vision about a little bit of our experience. Can I have the PowerPoint, please?
Okay, can we have our PowerPoint? Fantastic.
All right. So to kick off of our discussion today, I put together a brief slideshow of real-world leadership and how we can empower, engage, and help students excel as leaders of our future generations. In our schools, we have many different ways that we try to raise up leaders. And one of the main ways is by exposure and experiences. Because experiences are what give you the confidence and the ability to apply what you know in a practical, meaningful way that leads the next future generations. So as you can see in the top left, in kindergarten, we begin talking about college. Our particular schools are 100% what we call the free lunch program. That means their families make so low money that they get free food for breakfast and lunch while they're at school. In that picture, we're reading a story about Northern Arizona University, which is up in Flagstaff, Arizona. And they have the little lumberjack, and it is fun, it is playful, and is exposure for the kids to a college in our state. The picture to the right is us celebrating Chinese New Year. In Tucson, Arizona, there's not a very big Chinese population. Therefore, we thought it would be interesting to teach them about something that is not common nor familiar to our group. We are 88% Hispanic. So Spanish is common. Mandarin Chinese is not common. So we offer that just so the kids can see something very different from what they're used to hearing and speaking. The middle picture is just one of our graduating classes. And in that class, they all went to college, and they are all on their path to being those future leaders. And by education, what we believe is that education opens the door and it breaks generational cycles of poverty. It gives you opportunities you might not have otherwise. And so that is one of our main focuses at our schools. We'd also like to give them experiences with well-known people that we can get close to. I happened to meet Gene Simmons from the rock and roll band Kiss. Anybody know Kiss? All right, Kiss Nation right out there. So while it's not really our students' generation, they all still know of them because of the makeup and because of the dynamics of that group. And so having met them, and when they see this picture of me with him, one of the main guy of KISS, Gene Simmons, it's a chance for them to say, oh my gosh, we know her, and she knows him, so probably I could meet people that I want to meet. And so that's the purpose of it. Similar on this slide with Wahlberg. Mark Wahlberg is very, very famous with the Transformer movies and with speaking out on education because he did not finish high school. He went back to finish his high school education when his kids saw he didn't go to school and they didn't want to finish. And he said, whoa, whoa, I want you to finish. So he himself humbled himself, went back, finished the classes, and graduated. So that is a great role model and also somebody well known to the population. It speaks loudly to the kids when they see people that they are familiar with from TV that maybe they idolize, and then they can realize, actually, they're people. They're just people like me. This is a page where we believe real-life leadership can happen when kids take risks. And they are less likely to take risks if the culture of the school criticizes everything they do. So we have built and really work hard on constantly kids being generous and gentle with comments and with constructive feedback for their fellow schoolmates, so that when they are growing and learning and taking risks, they feel safe. So creating an environment that is safe, I believe, is very key to developing the future leaders. Because leaders make mistakes, and it's best to make them when they're young and when it's not as consequential. This is just a sampling of our soft skills that we use. We call them our skill sets for mega success. And it's just groupings of things that facilitate leadership. Communication, we all know that that's important, but are we giving our kids a chance to communicate? When I was in school, I don't know, maybe you guys had this happen or not, but when I was in school, we had sharing day. And you stood up in front of the class and you shared something about your life. What'd you do this weekend? Show your toy, show your family pictures, share something about your life. And we were forced to talk. I really don't see that these days in our classrooms. But if we can create other presentations, science presentations, I'm sure you've seen them all. Science fair is very common. But what else are we doing? How are we developing the personal skill set for our future leaders? That is important, and if we neglect that, we will not have as good of leadership. Here are 3 examples. We do have a business entrepreneurship program at our school. And the kids in high school, remember we are kindergarten through 12th grade, so our high school kids all create businesses. They can create 4 different ones, one for 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, or they can work on the same business and just make it better and better and better. And we've had modeling, we've had pet touch relief, we've had simple weed pulling. I mean, how many times have we wished we could hire some high school person to pull our weeds in our yard, right? Well, this guy has an actual website and business where he will come and take care of that for you for a very affordable price, plus then he gets some money to spend and to take care of his own personal needs. So they get that feeling of empowerment that I don't have to hope I get a job. I can offer my services. What services can I offer? Well, as a leader, you have to be aware of yourself. You have to take inventory. And so that is something that we encourage our students to do, and they've been very successful, especially with poverty being an issue. They don't want to feel that way anymore. So if they can bring relief by having some sort of a job or a way to create something and sell it, then they feel like they are contributing, and it bolsters their confidence, and it helps them see a way out. I'm in the midst of getting my book published. It's called Real World Leadership, convenient for this topic, and I love it because leadership for me is not only fun, but it is something that we know we want quality leaders for our future. And we are the lucky ones that get the chance to develop that in students. We're the educators. They spend more time with us than they do with their families. So we have a chance to really make a difference and help bring our kids up to a level of leadership like we've perhaps never experienced before. So now we're going to have our questions. We've pre-organized a few questions. We're going to start with Dr. Widgen. Did I say that correct? So if you can introduce yourself, and then I'll read you the question. And open.
First, hi. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Dr. Wujdan Al-Umaim. I am from Saudi Arabia, but I am having the privilege to teach here in UAE. So I am an assistant to professor and deputy head of department in radiography department, and also a researcher where my specific focus is actually on women breast health and breast cancer and mammography. And this is a big passion for me since, I was I graduated as a radiographer, and thank you very much.
So your question is, how do you as an educator prepare your students to become leaders in the future?
Okay, so for me, we all been student at some stage of our lives. So I also had the privilege to study in different countries. So with my father, I traveled to different countries, to Pakistan, because my father was working in the embassy, and then in Saudi Arabia. So the most important thing for students actually to build their confidence. So to be confident is the most important thing. And also there is multiple skills and qualities that need to be taught or skilled that in the student to be a great leader. So one of them is actually being, improve their communication. So how we do that? Improve their communication for me as an educator by providing them the environment where they can work together, communicate, and also to be comfortable between each other to also receive their any conservative criticism or not, we won't call it that, but any feedback, and to be open to it and also provide their colleague with all of this. The other thing is, the most important thing is to be resilient in the face of challenges. As you know nowadays, there is many challenges facing us actually. Not, any student in this world, I know with technology it's supposed to be easier, but it's makes it more challenging for some. So we need to make sure that these students, when they are faced with any challenge, to be resilient and to actually not be down and depressed and give up. We need to make sure that they have the environment where they can continue and grow, and they have this mentality that I will be better, and whenever I fail, that is not a problem. I'm learning. It's an opportunity to learn, and I will grow. And other things like critical thinking, empathy. Now, one of the most important thing is to be empathetic. So that's the thing that we might, as an educator, that what I've seen is just we disregarded, but it's very important to make sure that these students, they have empathy toward each other. Also, we see them, they are anyone with any student that you see, they have the need to make their environment, their community, school community is better. That's also a leadership a skill that need to be skilled, and giving roles and opportunities to develop these skills. Thank you.
Give her a hand. So empathy being something that isn't necessarily a natural response that we humans have. And so looking for that and looking for ways to develop that, for people to put themselves in other shoes and things like that. And all of the other, she has another question as well that's going to go great with that. But that is something that we talked about as a group, empathy, and what is its role in education, as well as all of the other skill sets you mentioned. This is open, so you guys may comment on each other's things if, as appropriate. And I'll give the next question to Tom Moffett. All right, Tom, tell a little bit about yourself, and then I'll pose the question.
Hello, good morning, everyone. I'm not sure the microphone is working, but hopefully you can hear me at the back. Perfect, perfect. Thank you, Dr. Herrera, for the introduction. I would like to begin by saying that it's a real honor to be here. Hopefully I can speak to as many of you as possible over the next few days, although I can't really walk and there's a lot of you, so it may be difficult, but I will do my best. My name is Tom. I'm an ex-British Army officer, and I served in the Educational and Training Services, which is a corps of professional educators who work in leadership development and educational support within the British Army. I carried out a number of roles. My last role included the management.
Try that one. Try that one.
Perfect. Is it good? No, it's fine. I'll speak.
Are you sure?
Yeah, sure.
Want to try mine?
No, it's good. It's good. I'm cursing all the microphones. I don't want to break them all. So my last role was the management of an education centre that delivered leadership development to senior soldiers. And my career highlight was having the privilege of leading soldiers on operations overseas. More recently, I've co-founded a company called InterContinental. We work in corporate leadership development. We also do some niche work within humanitarian assistance, which has led me to an active conflict zone in the last 6 months, dealing with child protection, and we also do a little bit of work in the third sector and with governments. And the last thing I would like to say as part of my introduction is that my core belief for leadership development is very simple. It's that leadership cannot be taught, but it can be developed, and it can only be developed the hard way. You can't develop it without going through trials and tribulations. In the same way that the diamond shines because of the extreme pressure that has been exerted on it, as is leadership. Leaders and excellent leaders will be developed because of the extreme situations and environments that they put themselves in order to develop themselves. And that's a challenge for educators because on the one hand, we need to keep students safe. We need to ensure as our first responsibility that they're safe. But we're also preparing them for a world that is inherently not safe. We're preparing them for a world that's volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous, and it's a real balance that must be struck, and hopefully that's an idea that we can unpack a little bit over the next few minutes.
Absolutely. All right, the question is, what aspects of leadership development in the military could be effectively transferred to an educational setting?
Let's see if it works. Oh no, I don't like it. I'm just it's fine. It's fine. So one area that the military in particular focuses on fantastically, and regardless of whether it's in corporate leadership or educational leadership, I feel this is neglected, and it's the idea of reacting to stress. And I don't mean the long-term debilitating type of stress. I mean the short-term flight or fight response you get when all hell breaks loose, when something seriously goes wrong. And in the military, in the British Army, we have a term for it, and it's called flapping. And I won't do the impression for you, and this is perhaps an insight into the military's dark humour, but flapping means when you take the head off a bird, of a chicken, it will flap for about 30 seconds before it stills and quietens. And so if you're accused of flapping as a leader, they're saying that you're making noise, but you've lost your head. You're not helping the situation at all. And that's the worst thing that you can be accused of, in my mind, as a leader, because the defining trait of a leader, and the thing that separates great leaders from good leaders, is their ability to remain calm under pressure. It's the ability to make a good decision when everybody else around you is losing their heads. Because if you lose your head, then a very good decision, if communicated poorly, can suddenly become a very bad decision if other people don't believe you, and if other people don't have that sense of calm and confidence transmitted to them that is your primary role as a leader. Equally, if you make a very bad decision, or, well, not a very bad decision, but if you make an okay decision but you communicate it fantastically, it can become a good decision if you rally those who are listening to that common cause. So in the military, that's something we really focus on, and you develop it by continually exposing yourself to stressful situations. And the military has to do this out of necessity because of what you're training for. But actually, in the modern day world, it's just as important, regardless of whether you're a surgeon who is operating on somebody who is going to make a split-second decision that may lead to somebody losing their leg or not, or you're a trader who is making a split-second decision that would lead to millions of pounds going one way or the other, or whether you're a teacher in a classroom and somebody is undermining your authority and they're criticising you and they're shouting out, and you've got that split second where you respond, and you may have lost that student, but every other student in the class is looking at you as a leader to see how you respond, and that may be the difference between you keeping control of that classroom and losing control of that classroom. And I'm very mindful of the fact that while I'm coming from a military perspective, I want to translate it back into an educational setting. So I'll give one example to end the point, which is in the British Army, of course we develop leadership within a military setting, but we also develop it holistically. And there was my business partner now, I can't see him, he's somewhere in the audience.
There he is.
There serious and standing up and waving. So we went through training together day one, and here we are a number of years later. But we've been taken to the British Museum in London, and we were told, you've got 2 hours. We want you all to have a 10-minute speech ready on 3 artifacts, and then we're all going to come and listen to the speech. So 2 hours later, we all came back. 9 of us had delivered the speech, and it had all gone fine. And then Dan is the last one to speak. And just as he's starting to speak, and this is why I love real-world experiences, because they're inherently unpredictable and you cannot prepare for them. 40 Chinese tourists come in and decide that because we're sitting there in suits, it looks like a fantastic idea to cram into the room and listen to Dan speaking. And what went from being a little bit of a stressful experience became incredibly stressful, because he is now the center of attention in this entire room. And he dealt with it fantastically. And he also speaks Mandarin, which helps. So he ended with a 30-second sort of thank you for coming, enjoy your stay in London, in Mandarin. But afterwards we discussed, and we said, well, actually, your reaction to stress in that moment was fantastic. And he said, well, yeah, of course, I felt more stressed. I held it together. But the point I'm trying to make is that that real-world experience added stress in a way that cannot be simulated in a classroom where you're looking after your students. But actually exposed him to stress that developed him as a leader in a way that very other few things could have done. So I'll leave that from there.
100%. That's great. We have a leadership team at Tucson International Academies, and 3 of my 4 principals are military, past military. And one of them's here. Mr. Goris, you going to raise your hand? Yes, Mr. Goris, thank you for your service. And I always say, something for me, having 22 years of running an organization, having these now military background people in key leadership positions, there is a difference. I have not put my finger on it exactly. It probably is the real world experience, is what I would guess. And the things that they're able to accomplish without much help from me at all is amazing. So I know that you're onto something, and I can't wait to see what research and programs you come up with in the future. It's great. All right, we have Dr. Raylyn Houchin. You want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Is my microphone working? Yeah, I think it is. My name is Dr. Raylyn Haugen, and I've been an educator for about 30 years. I've taught K to 12, all grades, and college-level classes, including doctorate-level classes. And I guess I specialize in experiential learning and real-world learning. And I kind of have a mission now to help educators apply that in their classrooms. It's not as easy as it seems. I did a dissertation on the future of education and instructional strategies that are necessary for that. One of the major findings that came out of that study was that experiential learning is at the forefront of what we need in our classrooms, both for children, K to 12, as well as teachers who are being trained. And so I have an organization, a consultancy, that I try to help people better their instructional strategies, whether they're educators, whether they're parents who are trying to educate their children, or whether they're educational leaders in the school systems. I'm on a mission to try to help people understand practical ways to have real-world education for leadership.
And further to elaborate on that, what changes do you see need to be made, especially at the university level, in order to prepare students for real-world leadership?
I think that to have real-world education, there are 3 main components. We need to have experiential learning, we need to have global inclusion, and we need to have emotional intelligence. And again, that goes for children in the K to 12 system need to be trained and have an educational journey in that manner. And teachers need to be trained how to do that, and they need to have their education in that manner. So For example, experiential learning, I think, is so important, which includes hands-on learning, interactive learning. It's not just about textbooks and worksheets and slideshows and that types of thing. It's actually applying what you've learned. And, you know, innovation is growing at an exponential rate. And more than ever, it's necessary to have creative and critical thinking abilities. So if we want our future leaders to have those abilities, we have to provide those opportunities in our classrooms. That includes our teachers who are being trained for the future. Part of what I do is I provide programs where teachers, I provide opportunities for them to try out what they're learning in textbooks. So, and I like what Tom said about, like a diamond is made under pressure. So I provide opportunities in the classroom to try out real-world situations. What would you do? Let's do some role playing. Let's do some case scenarios. What would you do if you have this situation with your student and their parents are in this situation and this is going on in the board and, everybody has this going on in their personal lives and everybody in the classroom has to have a different role, and you take it to the boardroom, and how would this unfold so that they can actually see what it's like in the trenches when you're in the classroom teaching. It's not just about academics. Half of it is probably, managing the emotional stress that comes along with, managing parents and students and that type of thing. And, so case scenarios, role playing, and also, and that helps to develop their emotional intelligence, but also experiential learning includes taking what's in the textbooks as far as your main subjects of academics and making it come alive. So I believe that for the future of education, we can't just look at our classrooms as 1 hour math, 1 hour language, 1 hour science, 1 hour social studies. We need to think about it in a very different way, where we need to be able to integrate subjects, teaching science and social studies at the same time, maybe throwing in language arts. And so that it's, instead of one-dimensional, it's three-dimensional. And it becomes so much richer, so much deeper. It requires more critical thinking, more creative thinking. An example of that, we talked about this last night when I was teaching in the K-12 system. I created, I'm a big believer in project-based learning, so I created a unit on the rainforest. And so we spent some time talking about the culture of the rainforest. We integrated science into it because we studied the plants and the animals in the rainforest. We interjected creative writing, what would it be like, an adventure in the rainforest. And then I threw in an actual experience where we had a field trip and we did a mock experience of where we went out into a forest that was close by. It wasn't a rainforest, but we made it as close to a rainforest as possible. And they had to practice survival skills. We set up the rules ahead of time of how they would implement it. And then we later on, they built fort shelter, kind of like the show Survivor. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that. But later on, we talked about what it would be like to have to survive in the jungle. And that learning experience, it made it come alive. All that science that they learned, all that they learned about the culture of the people that live in the rainforest, it came alive, and they'll never forget it. Those are the kinds of things that we need to be doing in our classrooms so that learning takes a real meaning, it is long-lasting, it's engaging, and it is something that the students can take with them going forward. And so we need to be training our teachers how to do that. It includes tapping into community, changing the hours of instruction in the classroom. School systems need to support that. Our resources need to be different. Anyway, that is kind of my background.
I would just say, well, because we did have some prior conversations, I love how it's problem solving. And there's always problems to solve in the world, correct? So if there are problems to be solved, one time one of my mentors told me that if you're concerned about how much salary you will make, just look at the problems in the world. And the more difficult the problem to solve that you choose to solve, the more that income will be. Because people in the world, we need problem solvers. And there is room and there is much, much work available for people who can solve problems. So I love that. It starts small, build a shelter. Wow, that's definitely a real world leadership experience. All right, we also have our other panelist member, Maria Preseton. Do you want to tell us a little about yourself? Thank you, Jennifer. Great. Go ahead. They just turn it on.
Okay, this one works. Thank you, Jennifer, and panelists. I'm definitely having a happy hour with all of you. There's so much to learn from them. So in terms of introduction, the way I'm going to do this is, first of all, good morning, everybody. It's really lovely to see you all, and I'm so glad I made it last night. I flew in from Singapore with a 3-hour delay. We had to change planes. So I wanted to, before I introduce myself, I wanted to ask the audience if you could just humor us, all of us, so that we can get to know each other. How many of you are educators? Could you just raise your hands? Fantabulous, fantastic. How many of you are consultants? Yeah, and sometimes you kind of like, cross over both. How many of you work in the corporate or corporatized organizations, multinationals, medium-sized, large organizations? Yeah, a few hands. Fantastic. How many of you are entrepreneurs? Great, fantastic. And some of you are probably like myself. I spent the last 30 years building something that they coined today. I didn't know it was a thing. They coined it today as portfolio career. So I'm actually all 4 of those. Or did I say 5 or something, I do all of that. So I came from corporate in commercial sales, and then went into entrepreneurship. Still am in it, still am a corporate leader. I have my own company, obviously, Leadership Scientific, and it provides learning and development for corporate and entrepreneurial organizations. I'm also a professor in a couple of universities, so visiting professor, part-time professor at Reading University, UK, but Malaysia. I'm based in Singapore, so I just go to Malaysia. And then I teach in France as well. So here's the thing. Here's an opportunity. There's a lot we can do together. And I'm hoping that after our panel discussion, there's so many great brains here. We could just mingle together during coffee and lunch and happy hour. Whatever you drink doesn't matter. But it's all about creating projects together, because just because we're sitting here in the panel doesn't mean that we know more. We need you to create projects together to solve problems. And there are a lot of problems out there. So one of the things that I specialize in is leadership styles, because I still am in corporate. I work for a German high-tech organization full-time, but at the same time I have the other portfolio career. And what I do is I take the concept of servant leadership into the corporate world. I came from previous corporate life, which is in sales, and there was a lot of micromanagement, still is today. There was a lot of bullying. There was a lot of toxic energy, and I came out of it, and I said to myself, I'm going to fix that, or at least try. So I've got a couple of books on servant leadership. But the nicest thing about servant leadership, it's a philosophy. So what I actually do is I bring other leadership styles and assessments, and so probably I need to know anybody that sells assessments or whatever, to actually build upon it and not work with servant leadership alone. And in order for us to be a servant leader, do good, growing others, and as a result of growing others, is their well-being becoming, better and higher, then you add in different leadership styles, right, and different tools to work in it. So where I'm come from is I see problems, human problems, work problems that are related to human, because they're created on a human level, and really just expand that and say, who can I partner with? How can we work together? So that's my introduction. Thank you, Jennifer.
Think of leadership being servant-oriented. Many of us have experienced the model of leadership that's very top-down, where they say, do this, and here's your deadline, and it better be good. And, different styles of leadership, of course, have always existed, but have not always been well accepted. So I think that's interesting. You're infiltrating the corporate world, which is very, from my perception only, I have not been there, but cutthroat, just very competitive and not very nice. So see leadership as a servant. When you're serving people, it doesn't mean that you're soft. And I think that would probably be something that we can tell the kids. It's good to be nice, but you hold your ground. You don't let your boundary be crossed, and you maintain the focus on whatever it is you're solving. So I love that, because I think it's very effective. And once people see your heart behind what you're trying to do, that is often the key that opens the door. You don't always have to be firing and dismantling and throwing out things. Yes, sometimes you need to do that, but if it's the norm, maybe it can be more service-oriented in solving problems and in working together in a way that brings people to the table, not runs them off. So I love that idea. I can't wait to see what you do. All of you are fantastic panelists. We have 15 minutes, a little short, and I just wanted to see if you wanted to go back through, and maybe we can do more brief little statements or shorter versions of anything, but I'm sure you've been stimulated hearing everybody now give an introduction. So why don't we start with hold on, let's see here, where am I? Oh yes, Dr. Widgeon. Maybe we can start with you, and you can respond to anything or just say a couple more words to encourage the audience, and then we'll save the last 5 minutes for some audience questions. All right? So we have 10 minutes for us to interact. Go ahead.
First of all, I just want to say thank you for the amazing input, and I'm really honored to be with all these brilliant minds. The thing is, also one of the things that I see that the college is also taking is using simulators and all of that in order to create a real-life scenarios while not putting the student under the risk. So one of the things, like for example, I am teaching radiography and I teach ultrasound. So one of the things is, instead of just taking the student immediately to the ultrasound room and make them, scan the patient, what they do is go through the simulator where it's like the phantom simulating a patient, and they can scan through it, find the pathology and all of that. So that's actually that's the technology that assists us to develop and, in a way that we put our student in an environment that is good for them, but also not put them under huge risk. The other thing is, I know you mentioned emotional intelligence. That's actually one of the good things that, as you both mentioned, that we need to put our students under a pressure, and it's not under a pressure in a bad way, but to make sure that they know that this life, we need to work hard. We need to make sure that any failure, anything is not a stopping point. If you don't mind, I want to tell something. Now, I'm honored again to be from Saudi Arabia, but if you look at Saudi Arabia like 20 years ago and compare it to now, there is a huge difference. So I will tell you a small story of mine. So I was one of the first or early, let's talk around my family. So I was the first to actually leave the country and go to abroad. I did my postgraduate in Ireland. So imagine at that time, everybody was against this. So I remember my mom and dad was the most supportive people, so they hide my bags outside. They took me to the airport, and then from there, I opened the door to every female in the family to travel and to study, that's something I'm really happy. I know that experiencing this, it makes me more determined to actually assist everybody, and not just, I'm not saying only female, but now if you look back at our region, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and in the world, there is many, many female leaders, which I'm very proud, and to see them, making a stand and making something. I'm not being what we call it racist or stereotyping. No, I'm just talking from, because I am in this stage. I just want to say that thank you, everybody, male or female, for all this hard work, despite your position in this world or anything. Everybody works together, makes a difference, despite from, I can't say low level, but we are levels. Each one do something. Without anyone, we cannot, live in this world. So thank you very much.
Thank you. That was very inspiring. Jennifer talked about problems. There are a couple of problems that when we hire in the corporate world, immediately when we're hiring from universities, colleges, polytechnics, technical schools, first 6 months to 2 years, this is real-time problem. Professionalism is missing. We're looking at students not being prepared for the real world because COVID just happened, and their social skills went down. Even if they were, and it's nothing to do with being introvert, extrovert, ambivert, nothing to do with that, because they were highly social, very, very kind of like extroverted, and then comes COVID. In Asia Pacific, Singapore and Malaysia and China had 3 to 4 years complete lockdown. Not 6 months, not 1 year. So it was 3 to 4 years complete lockdown. They opened up in 2023, 2022. And so what this turns out to be as a consequence, no matter how social you were as a student, you don't know how to socialize and influence anymore or work in a team because you haven't seen people face to face. Governments lock them down, right? So as I went into the academics and work with leveraging all the soft skills, actually they're hard skills, because without the soft skills, you can't work in teams. So building professional programs for them to go back to corporate. I'm back in corporate, and so I'm really partnering with universities to make sure there's a good transition between universities or colleges. So what I personally call it a foreboarding. You're exiting as a student, but you're foreboarding towards onboarding into corporate. So what I would encourage people to do is really start in organizations, in educational systems, universities, build programs that are experiential, dealing with stress, emotional intelligence, social intelligence, and influencing skills. These are hard skills. Hard skills are not technical skills. I come from a tech company, but that's no longer the single hard skill, because without influencing skills or interpersonal skills, social skills, EQ, you can't move forward as a human being, because even if you don't have position power, you've got to be able to influence others. When I do executive coaching, senior leaders come to me after, already being in a position power. They say, Maria, am I a good leader? I get this question every month. Somebody pops out, am I a good leader? And then I look at their background, how they grew up, what they studied, how they studied. Oh, I read a lot of self-help books. Self-help books teach you the what. Nobody teaches you the how. So people like us in this room, we're here to gear up and teach the how. No matter what magic you're producing, your programs, teach the how, because these guys, they're Gen X and they're boomers, and they're lost. And so what happens? The future Gen X, future boomers, which is our children today, if we don't help them in the educational system while they're at school, at universities, they will become this future leader in 30 years and ask somebody that, like Maria, is an executive coach and say, 30 years later, am I a good leader? How do you define that? Right? So what I'm encouraging is projects, please. Talk to each other, talk to us, get projects together, help children meaning, students, to become somewhat transitioning well professionally. They'll learn the culture, right? Partner with organizations. They'll learn the culture, partner with organizations, help them to become proactive, bring their voice out, learn about stress management. So with that, I'm learning from all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. I really like your point about the how. I think that's so important. And as I've worked with, I've had the opportunity to talk with provosts of universities and that are very big proponents of STEM education, science, technology, engineering, and math. And they have said that one of their biggest frustrations and challenges is that, yes, lots of people talk about STEM and how exciting it is and how important it is for the future, and conceptually it's a great idea. But STEM education requires a lot of project-based learning, and teachers so far, at least I'm from the United States, teachers from the United States up until now have not really been trained on how to implement that in the classroom. So that's why it's so important that we get down to the grassroots. Okay, yes, that's a great concept, but how do you actually do it? And it's not just the teachers, it's the school systems, the administration, the community, resources that all have to come together to support this different way of learning that's so important for the future. The other thing I would like to say is that I'm just so thankful to be here with this panel and with all of you, and I think it's so great that Education 2.0 puts on this conference for people from all over the world, that we're all coming here together. And that was one thing that I didn't talk as much about when I spoke a few minutes ago, is that to me, global education is so important to integrate into academic subjects in the classroom, because we have global economies, we have global infrastructure. It's time that we understand that global education is a huge part of our future. We have access to one another like we never have had before, and it's exciting, and it makes our classrooms challenging for one, but also so much richer and so much more interesting. But it takes more skill from the teachers on how to integrate all of that. And so I think that's another area that we need to focus on.
So I'd just like to speak a little bit more to Dr. Presentine's point on servant leadership, because when I commissioned from the Royal Military Academy Sandhurst after a year's worth of leadership training, you walk up the steps for the first time of Old College, and there's a sign above your head that says, "Serve to lead." And that's the motto of the college. And a quick question for everybody. Put your hand up if you find the idea of serving to lead a little bit difficult to wrap your head around. Okay, we've got one who served alongside me. Well, you're all you're all a lot smarter than me, because it was something that I found difficult to wrap my head around, because it's a paradox. And I would often say, "Colour Sergeant, what does it actually mean?" And he would say, "Mr. Moffat," he wouldn't use my name Tom because I wasn't worthy of a name, but he would say, "Mr. Moffat, when you get it, you'll get it." And I finally do get it. But the point that I want to make is that actually the leaders that we select in society, this is particularly prevalent in the corporate world, but it also happens in the military, often exemplify those traits that make them bad leaders. We've all been in a room where the person who reaches that leadership position and is selected as a leader is simply the one that talks the loudest, that shouts down over other people, who lacks empathy. And I can see nodding heads because we've all been there. And those very traits that allow people to become leaders are often the worst traits once they become leaders, because they still shout over people, they still lack empathy, they still don't want to think about their followers and those around them. So I want to end with a question as much as a solution. Because before I say that, you should all read Jeffrey Pfeffer's book on power, because he talks a lot about this, which is that we select the traits for leadership that often are the most toxic traits. So I want to think about how, as educators, we can instill those correct traits without rewarding those traits that actually we naturally associate with natural leadership. And I'm not saying that taking charge and talking over people is a bad thing. I have a military background, and I understand that in certain environments it's incredibly effective, but we also need to understand that there are other ways of leading, and we need to reward those ways of leading, and perhaps ensure that those people who do assert themselves more readily also have understood this concept of servant leadership, so that when we do have corporate leaders, 20 years after they've left the classroom, they're doing the right thing. Because one thing that I hear again and again and again is there's a crisis of leadership. We have so many leaders, but all of them do the wrong thing. So my question for you, I guess, to ponder is, how can you inculcate these values very early on? And it's a difficult question, so that in 20 years' time, the leaders that we have are doing the right thing, not the wrong thing.
We have 1 minute and 23 seconds. If anyone would like to ask a quick question or just make a quick comment, we'd love to hear something from the floor just to see if we have penetrated the activities today. And while you're thinking of that, I will just say that as I'm listening to the leadership, another point I would make is that it appears that leaders need a set of criteria that they can measure some of their growth. So as leaders of leaders, which that's what educators are, we are leading the kids that are going to be leading our nations, leading our organizations, leading our corporations. If we can help them to set measurable goals with themselves, they can actually see if they're growing. And it's hard to define those kinds of goals, isn't it? Because it can be all over the place. So, did I have a quick question? Yes.
Hello.
Yes.
Sorry,
Hello.
This question is for Dr. Presentine. My name is Ishani Supeni. I work for a psychology firm in South Africa, and we are actually in a similar business where we work with skills development, soft skills development for postgraduates and corporate world, right? My question for you is, obviously with what we're discussing here, have you tried to get into the schools, and how have you found that penetration? Because obviously from our experience, what we've been seeing is that by the time you are teaching an adult empathy, it's a bit too late, right? You want to actually get them to get those skills when they're younger, so that by the time they're in these leadership positions, it's something that is sort of like a second nature to them. They can serve and lead properly because these skills have been developed as they grow up. How have you found collaborating or getting into schools? I mean, because that's one of the biggest issues, like trying to convince them that these are actually skills that students and kids need for the future. They might not be seen as so important right now, but when they are adults, they need them. How have you seen that, and what steps have you taken in your space? Thank you.
Briefly, you want to say something quickly about that? We are out of time, but give a quick few sentences.
Okay, right. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you very much for that question. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much for that question. So I think there are a couple of answers, but I'm going to be really brief about it, and we can talk about it later. So getting into schools, there are a lot of ways of getting into schools, and I'm assuming what you mentioned is schools, so high schools or something younger. As a corporate currently, we have partnerships with universities, colleges, and technical institutions. So we don't partner with schools. But as a consultant, one of the ways to go into schools, and sometimes I do a little bit of pro bono as well, is to go through assessments. So measurable is a big deal. So let's say high schools, when you could work with a particular assessment that starts to measure those high school students that are going into university or going to national service, which is military. Some countries in Asia do that, right? Or they just want to open their own company, or they want to go into working directly without going to university. Now, they're lost. Am I doing the right thing? Is that my right path? So showing schools where, and working with that psychologists in the school, where their assessments are telling you a story about themselves, their strengths, that's a good way to get in. So I think that's the time that I have, but we can talk more. Thank you.
Yes, definitely look each other up. We have so much more we would love to share and talk about. So please, let's meet for happy hour, and every time we get a chance to discuss things from this. You guys want to stand up? This is the panel for real. Let me see those right. Real world leadership.